For life.
Macho Man Randy Savage is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Maybe my absolute number one favorite even. In my opinion, he's the most well-rounded guy that the business has ever seen. A legend in every aspect, in the ring, on the microphone, the way he carried himself, and the powerful words he delivered in various interviews. The one about it being okay for a man to cry that he did on Arsenio Hall. I mean, fantastic. He also always made sure he looked the part of a professional wrestler. Lost art, by the way, but I digress. Extravagant and always unique, ever-changing gear that he spent tons of money on, out of pocket, to have hand-tailored, just to set him apart. And yes, he used steroids for much of his career and even past it to maintain his huge build that left even non-wrestling fans who saw him staring in public and knowing that that man was somebody special. But I think those years of steroid abuse are sometimes used as a crutch by fans to explain his sudden, out-of-the-blue passing. Kind of like how they use the same excuse for the Ultimate Warrior's death that was also sudden and out of the blue. But hey, we've already covered that one. So if you want to hear what I think about the Ultimate Warrior's death, please check that video out after this one. Yes, what if I were to tell you that, much like Owen Hart, Eddie Guerrero, and even Chris Benoit before him, and Ultimate Warrior after, there's something much more sinister at play here at the hands of the hottest topic in news these days, Vince McMahon. And maybe even a quote-unquote vitamin-taking, devious grudge-holding longtime peer of his, Hulk Hogan. Hey, this is all allegedly and for entertainment purposes though, right? Anything I say here are simply theories and observations meant to make one think past the mainstream narrative, because as we are all coming to see, the mainstream narrative is and always was bullshit. And also, as you can clearer than ever see, Vince McMahon is and always was a very bad person. And just as expected, more and more former employees and talents are starting to come out of the woodworks on him, which leaves everyone's minds ripe to accept these possibilities that, aside from being a predator towards vulnerable women, he's also quite possibly one of the hands responsible for the deaths of many of our childhood heroes. You see, one of the conspiracies behind Randy Savage is that he had an affair with a 17-year-old Stephanie McMahon, leaving Vince fuming when he found out. And as time passed, the validity of that conspiracy seemingly got more and more plausible until it was just pretty much widely accepted. But I don't think it's true. I'm not completely ruling it out, especially with recent news coming out on McMahon and how he likes to conduct his business. Anyways, but I believe it was another smear campaign against Macho Man, along with how he's been painted as a woman-abusing maniac that locked Elizabeth in closets backstage. Vice and that hoe bag, Gorgeous George, even contributed to this narrative on the also smear campaign that was the Dark Side of the Ring episode on Randy. Crazy how those assholes never mentioned Vince all of these years and all of his crap, huh? Savage was blacklisted either voluntarily or involuntarily from the WWE for the remainder of his life after he left McMahon and the then WWF for rival WCW in late 1994. But you know what? I'm willing to bet that it was voluntarily. May Randy have had something to do with an underage Stephanie McMahon? Again, sure. I'm not ruling it out. Imagine if Vince had offered that as a bargaining chip for re-signing. Randy took him up on it and still bounced for Turner and WCW. Do you think Vince would ever forgive that? Or do you think he would hold a grudge, just like he did against Ultimate Warrior? who took him to court and beat him, embarrassed him, and took the Ultimate Warrior creation from him, something that Vince considered his property. A grudge that would eventually see him conspiring to end the guy who won't play ball so he can make all that filthy blood money off of merchandise from gullible, nostalgic fans, just like he did with Warrior. Just a conspiracy, but let's say Vince is sweating Ted Turner. He done lost the Hulkster, and Turner's WCW is gaining steam. He's real down and out, and he's been lonely and screwed up. This is Randy. Randy's real down and out. He's been lonely and screwed up from losing Elizabeth. For years it's bothered him. And it was an intricate plan that Vince McMahon worked hand in hand with Hulk Hogan on, as is one of the main game plans for controlling people in this little game of theirs. And oh yes, it's all a game. You see, you ruin people's personal lives and relationships, and they're so much easier to control. It's like work is all they have left, you know. Anyways, let's say Vince has Stephanie buttering this dude up. Mach, right? And Vince is using it as a bargaining chip to lock Savage up like he did with that poor young lady and Brock Lesnar. It's also really good blackmail to have on somebody sleeping with an underage girl. Just like it's really good blackmail to have a straight man sleeping with a gay man, and they employed that tactic a lot too. But let's say Savage turned it down and left for Turner after all. Damn, if that's what happened, that's a huge blow to Vince McMahon's ego. And also, great vengeance fuel, huh? Same as the other scenario. But hey, speaking of Hogan, Savage sure wasn't afraid to let the world know how much of a coward he was in those last several years of his life, huh? Even wrote, recorded, and released a whole rap diss track on the man. Just like how Warrior was very verbal about the scumbag he supposedly is to those he works and associates with when he did that shoot on Hogan. We've got that here on the channel. You can go back and look at that as well if you want to check that out. And just like with Warrior, Hogan was free and clear to push this false, "Oh, we made up, brother." He apologized for all of the mean words and said it was just frustration. His career didn't go the way that he wanted it to go, brother. Yeah, okay, bud. I had one commenter say that he says that much studying has led him to the belief that Vince McMahon handed down okays to people to take others out. And it was wrestlers themselves responsible for arranging these hits on other wrestlers. Well, in the case of Randy Savage and Ultimate Warrior, I advise us all to point the finger at the Hulkster and start asking the real questions. Why did he work with Vince McMahon to destroy Randy Savage's marriage and home life? That's the first good one. No, I don't believe it was steroids. Scott Steiner is alive and kicking, and even his kidneys haven't went out yet. And listen to Conan about how that guy can't lay off the bottle either. No disrespect to Scott, I love him as a legend. Just making a point here. And I don't think it was cocaine either, to hear Randy's good friend and travel buddy from back in the days, Billy Jack Haynes, tell it. No, he has went on the record in stating that Randy Savage was clean. He didn't do drugs. He also says the same thing that took Randy out, took Ultimate Warrior out, just like I suspect as well. A hit that used a mafia drug which goes to the heart and shuts it down indetectable within 48 hours. Listen, I can tell you this. It sure sounds like Randy expected something to happen or someone to try something. He's painted as a recluse in his final years, which is true to an extent. But he was taking care of his elderly and dying father until he passed away in 2009. What's alarming, though, is that he had his home outfitted with gates, security cameras, and guard dogs, as well as he always made sure he was carrying a pistol in his glove box or on him. I get that he's a celebrity, or was rather, but that's paranoia that goes beyond expecting an average civilian intruder or thief. interesting to note. A few months after his father passed, Randy decided to try to get back to enjoying his life and moving on, and rekindled with a teenage sweetheart of his by the name of Lynn. They ended up marrying in May of 2010, almost exactly to the day, a year before his eventual death. What would be a good way to infiltrate a man who's as guarded as that, not to mention huge and strong, hard to take down? Well, through his wife. That's just a theory, no unintended disrespect, but it's one that's been thrown out on Warrior. Dana obviously worked with Vince on that, and current day can be seen promoting agendas that Warrior worked hard to fight against. Getting all that sweet merch money on the Warrior's name and stuff, though, aren't you, Dana? Pretty set. And pretty damn sus. Is this Lynn lady also sus? No clue. But worth looking into, I would say. Although she has a pretty tight alibi, would be insane to hop into a vehicle with someone you know has been poisoned and could go down at any moment. I don't know. I want to hear what you guys think about the Randy Savage death. All I know is that it doesn't sit right with me, and it shouldn't for you either. You guys are always a joy to interact with and have a ton of knowledge to share, so please chime in on the comments and let me know if there's anything I missed here and your feelings on the Macho Man.